we'll start at the top of the card as well. And this is the 130, the finest surprise stakes, which is now known as. Adele, I'm interested here because I remember you being against Hurricane Lane, particularly when you saw him in the paddock for ITV. And I'm all out because I think he'll be campaigned a similar way. I'd just be against him here. I think Mojo Star is just as good as him, to be honest. But you're with him, are you? But would you not want to have a good old look at him first?
Yeah, but I just like when I spoke to Charlie like last year after last season, I think I'm sorry, but you can't possibly be coming into this year in the same way as what he was last year. Like, absolutely. I just think he can't. Like, I love Charlie Appleby as a trainer. I think he's fantastic. I cannot imagine he would be coming into this season that size. I can only really think that maybe he had a little bit of a problem last year. I know he's a big looking horse anyway. You know, he carries a lot of condition. He wasn't quite ready for the Hardwick. So he'll definitely. I have heard though that he's working really, really well. So that's a big plus. I think he pulled 5 lengths clear of whatever he worked with the other day. So that's kind of has me thinking like he wouldn't be still in training, would he, if there was something wrong with him and they're working back from the arc. So I just cannot have him coming into this season how he was last year. Like I can't imagine Charlie making that mistake twice. I just can't. Okay,
fair enough. You're with, I'm against, and the other two are I don't know about dead against, but looking elsewhere. Charlie, you're with Mojo?
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm against Hurricane Lane. I agree completely with what Adele says. I can't believe Charlie Appleby is going to risk him being as unfit as he was for his seasonal debut last year. But he's still, even allowing for that, he's got questions to answer about whether he retains all his ability that we saw, you know, from his 3-year-old season. So I think Mojo Star, there's reasons to believe he can still progress further. You know, we only saw him last year in the Gold Cup when he ran such a huge race. The ammo horses are flying. Not that means anything towards this horse's chance, but I just think that there's upside to him in this staying division, and there's reasons to believe that he can go on to much bigger and better things. For all that we've seen a very high level already. I was nearly tempted by Max Vega to repeat last year's victory in this race with his real liking for his form at Newbury. Seems to be better than anywhere else, but Mojo Star for me, and again taking on Hurricane Lane.
Stephen.
Yeah, I want to be against Hurricane Lane, considering that I think he's going to need the run. And I thought Isra was interesting. A horse that went through handicaps last season, was 5-2 favourite for the November handicap. That was on desperate ground, and he had a very wide draw. And I think it just came on he'd been on the go a fair amount of time, but he progressed really well, and he's got plenty of form on soft ground. I don't think that's going to be a problem, and he's got the pedigree to step up to this sort of level, I think, this year. I'm glad that some of you finally realised that ratings don't mean anything in these sort of races. It's who's ready and who's progressing, and I think that's Isra, who is a son of Tagruda, who won the Oaks and was favoured for the Arc. So he's got a top-class pedigree, and is with John and Thady Gosden. So you'd imagine there'd be fine first time up. He's a horse that won on debut, so you'd be hopeful. And Isra for me.
All right, moving on to the Fred Darling, now known as the Dubai Duty Free Stakes, and Rimarquais 4.5, Bridestones is 6.0 as his Magical Sunset, Swing Along 7.0, Olivia Meralda is 8.5, 10.0 Soul Sister, then into bigger prices. Charlie Poste are going to come straight to you, and I agree with you, but I know a lot of people are going to be saying she won't stay.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, especially, you know, this 7 furlongs on a flat track, as in she had a really good juvenile year. She was excellent in La Alva, and then, you know, ran well in the give me a clue here. I've got a complete mental blank.
Newmarket.
Newmarket.
In the Phillies race.
Cheveley Park. Sorry,
Cheveley Park. Thank you,
you,
Steve. Yeah, exactly. Ran very well there. And Carl Burke, I just think whether he probably doesn't believe that she's going to stay the Guineas Mile. So this is a good prize in its own right. And I think she might just have sharpness on her side. Carl Burke's already won a trial. He took the Craven out yesterday with Indestructible. And there might be fillies in this race with more long-term potential that are going to progress beyond her. But as Steve has said, this is about the here and now with these sort of races. And I believe that she will be tuned up and ready to rock and roll. And if she bowls along in front and Clifford Lee gets an easy lead, she's going to take a bit of passing. And then I suppose they can make a plan where they go, whether they drop back with sprinting with her or whether they chance it at Newmarket beyond there.
Yeah, I agree. I think she won't stay a mile. 7 will be absolutely fine. She's the top rated in the race, but she's very good. And I know that the others. I just think this race it often attracts towards the top of the betting a once race once winner, and they might end up being the best of them. But for the here and now, we know how good Swing Along is, and I think 7 will be fine. And I thought she was overpriced. That's all. Steve.
Yeah, I think it's very easy in these sort of races to get carried away with horses that have run once and won once, the likes of Bridestone. So I think we'll need a fair bit further than 7 furlongs and Remark in Soul Sister and have you. But it always tends, these early season classic trials always seem to go the horses that did well as 2-year-olds that had a few runs. And saying that, I'm going for a horse that is run twice and only on the all-weather of Owen Burrows called Embrace, who first time up ran behind Dancing Goddess, who's a Charlie Appleby Godolphin horse who I think is going to be very good. It's a race that contained plenty of winners at a level, and like you would expect, Owen Burrows horses certainly improve next time to win at Wolverhampton in the manner of a really smart, promising filly. This will be her first time on turf, but she's by Lope de Vega, so you'd hope that the soft ground wasn't too much of a problem. I watched her win at Wolverhampton, and she did seem to pick her knees up a little bit, so hopefully that'll be the case. And she got a nice high draw, so she's just one that I thought was overpriced in a race that is always pretty open, and she's 23.0 or something like that. So I thought winning place, she was the way to go against horses like Remark and Bridestones that I think struggle in these sort of races.
Okay, and Adele, 6.0 shot Magical Sunset. I mean, the owners are in great nick.
Oh, they literally. I mean, big year, isn't it, for Kevin Stott this year? And he looks like he's got some really nice horses to ride. I was torn between Swing Along and her. Swing Along, I am a little bit dubious about the fact that she can overdo it a little bit in front. So first time out, I was thinking, I don't know, I'm just not quite sure whether she just might be a little bit too gassy. Carl's horses are in great form as well, but she's been quite progressive, this filly. I know she didn't make her debut till August last year, so she's clearly needed a little bit of time. She's actually the only horse to beat Sakir. Richard said she is one of the nicest. When he bought her as a yearling, she was one of the nicest ones he's ever seen in his life. So I know he's really held her in high regards. I wasn't quite sure, as a profile. Yeah, I was thinking, she seemed to relish Newbury last year in a listed race over 7 furlongs on heavy ground, but she'd been beaten with cut in the ground previously. So whether it was the fact that she stepped up to 7 or just the fact that she seemed to handle the conditions better that day, I don't know, but she's hugely progressing. So at the prices, I came down on her because Show Along, I'm not quite sure whether might be just a bit too gassy and overdo it in front first time out.
All right. So just to recap on that, we've got Swing Along for Charlie and I, Embrace Steve, Magical Sunset for Adele. Now we move on to the Greenham. There were going to be no official bets here. I'm going to stick something up because just at the prices. But first of all, Adele, Alex has said Chaldean for the Guineas. You called that already. Did you call that already for the Guineas? And if so, well done. And what do you like about the horse for the Guineas?
I love him anyway. I loved him last year. Frankie, like, he sings his praises. I mean, come on, Frankie's like, he's, you know, what hasn't he, you know, what kind of horse has he not ridden that he knows what level they're at? He seems really straightforward. He was a little bit slow a couple of times out of the stalls last year, but I just love him. I just think he's a really nice horse. I can't see why he hasn't taken another step forward. Look, it's still kind of quite early doors, isn't it? Find out a little bit more, I suppose, on Saturday. But yeah, I think, well, was my early shout for the Guineas.
I'm just going to mention Streets of Gold without the favourite, who is obviously unbeaten, has won on all sorts of ground, but at 15.0, I think this horse is the price he is because he's maybe got a less sexy profile. He's come there, he ran a nursery, then he went to the sales races, but they're good races in their own right. And yes, Knight was impressive last time, tipped up by Michael DC at a big price. Theory of Everything's won with Cut Underfoot, but Streets of Gold ran to a pretty high level last year, and at the Curragh when he won, it absolutely tipped it down. So Cut is going to be no issue, and I think he's just a bit overlooked. So Chaldean will win, I think, but I thought Streets of Gold at the prices was interesting. Anybody got anything to add? You don't have to. Good. Let's move on to the handicap 315. And Latam is 3.5. Al Rave is 9.5. Jimi Hendrix 11.0. Atrium 11.0. As is Saga 12.0. Bigger the rest. There's a lot of Lincoln form on offer here, which has already worked out pretty well. And we've got 4 different shouts. Good. Charlie, first of all.
Saga for me. He's got cheek pieces on for the first time. Gosden's horse are running well. He's got Benoit de la Sayed on, claiming an extra £3 off. You know, you go back to the form of the Britannia where he ran second in a huge field. Obviously, nothing like that today. But the form with Algiers at York has worked out very well, even with the horses behind there. And I just think, again, there's every chance to believe this could be a group horse in the making. It's a competitive contest, this, with some horses with some really nice profiles. 4-year-olds also have an excellent record in this race, and I think the draw should be fine. Plenty of the fancy ones are in and around him. So Saga for me.
And Steve Jones.
Yeah, this is a horse that is currently 26.0, but will go off half that price, I'm sure. It's Great Max, who's one of my horses to follow this season. And it's another ammo racing horse. And that's interesting because it's left Michael O'Callaghan and joined Alice Haynes. Well, we saw at the Craven that horse leaving Michael O'Callaghan, joining Carl Burke, I think, wasn't it? Won that race. So it's interesting. Great Max has been gelded as well over the winter, and he does look the type of horse that will improve for that. And if you go back to his 2-year-old form, I thought he looked really good. First time up, I remember him seeing him win at Newbury. And then he ran in good races behind the likes of Point Lonsdale and Native Trail. He was runner-up in the Solaro, but reached to the moon. Then he moved to Ireland. He was trained by Michael Bell as a 2-year-old. Then he moved to Ireland. It hasn't worked out whatsoever. But he's gone down to a really interesting mark, I think, this horse. And if he's fit enough first time up, and Alice Haynes did have him in the Lincoln, so he must have been on the go for a fair amount of time. And she's also in really good form. I think she's a really good trainer, Alice Haynes. And she's having winners, so that bodes well. Little bit disappointed about the draw, but you can't have everything in life, especially at 26.0. So Great Max winning place, I think, is a tremendous bet. You might have to, after the race, you might have to say, well, I just needed it a bit, but you'll get your money back on this horse. This is going to be a really profitable horse all summer, and that is Great Max.
Adele.
I've come down with Brunch, who ran a really good race at Doncaster at Lincoln Day. He ran in the mile listed race, and usually he comes on for his run. He's quite a big burly horse, and usually Michael Dodds would need a run. They certainly seem to look like this season they seem to be needing a run anyway, although I think he had a winner at Ripon the other day, so maybe they're just starting to turn form. He's been a little bit of a hard horse to place because he's kind of not really Group 3 level. He's won listed races. Buick's on board. I think he'll take a massive step forward fitness-wise from Doncaster, because I did get a good look at him, and he still looked quite big. So I think he'll take a big step forward. He's a very straightforward horse. He was placed off this mark last year at York, carrying joint top weight in a handicap. So he's not been an easy horse for Michael to kind of place with, because it's like, where do you go trying to find listed races? And then he's not good enough for Group 3, but obviously he has to carry plenty of weight in handicaps. But like I said, I still think he should be able to play a part off this mark, and he's pretty straightforward, and William gets a good tune out of him.
Okay, I'm going to stick up 2 horses that ran in the Lincoln, which, as I say, has had the form frank pretty well already, with Empire State of Mind and Bo Pedro coming out and finishing 1-2 in a race. First of all, Revich, who probably got the worst trip of all the horses, was on the wide outside. The race developed away from him. He still ran on quite well, and he's got form with cut underfoot. He's a fair old price, Revich, who is 17.0. And the other one is a bit more obvious. Atrium, I think, is a really nice horse. He ran disappointingly when he got a lot of cover in the Lincoln, and then he just found nothing. Just ran as if he needed it. He just showed absolutely nothing late on. So no obvious excuses. It could be that the ground was too testing for what he's won on soft. But if you go back to his form at the back end of last year, it's really strong. I'm just hoping he really needed the run, and he's 11.0. Just on the draw, I probably prefer Revich, because I think when there's cut underfoot at Newbury, sometimes you want to be middle to far side, but doesn't always